Welcome to Ditch Disordered Eating with Dana, where we learn how to build a healthy relationship with food. What if you could wake up every day and didn't have to think about food or your body? What if you woke up and thought about all of your potential and the ability to focus on your goals in life? Hi, I'm your host, Dana Wells, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and counselor. Together, we will explore different types of eating disorders and how to improve our negative cognitions with food. Stay tuned. Ditch Disordered Eating with Dana starts now. Hi, and welcome to the show. We are so excited to start this new show. And actually, the title of our show is What's It All About? What is our show all about? So what we want to do is really give a message that talks about having a healthy relationship with food and really exploring disordered eating and eating disorders, and how there's kind of a slippery slope sometimes between eating disorders and disordered eating and how to fill that gap in between. My name is Dana Wells. This is my lovely colleague and co-host, Greta O'Donnell. A little bit about ourselves. I am a registered dietitian and a licensed professional counselor. I own a private practice where I do trauma work, specialize in eating disorders, disordered eating, weight management, and also therapy. So I help clients in kind of a holistic way. And that's why we're bringing the show here to today, because we feel it's a very important topic that we really need to explore and educate people on. Greta, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Dana, and thank you for letting me come on your show, Ditch Disordered Eating with Dana. I'm Greta O'Donnell, and I am a registered dietitian. I have my master's degree, and I specialize in eating disorders and disordered eating and helping men and women everywhere with body image and how to really learn to nourish ourselves without this distress and shame that sometimes food can come with in today's world. So I'm really happy to be here, Dana.
Thanks, Greta. So the first thing we're going to talk a little bit about is, we all struggle with thoughts and challenges addressing food. And there's different types of eating disorders and the lingo that goes with that. So we thought we would talk about educating individuals on what that's all about. So first of all, the best way and the most evidence-based research way to find out about eating disorders is something called the DSM, or the Diagnostic Manual of Mental Health. So a lot of individuals don't realize that in all of the addictions, all of the mental health problems, eating disorders are actually the hardest to treat. And so there's a whole series of criteria in order to assess what type of eating disorders an individual has and how to help individuals treat that way. So if you are wondering if you fit into, not that we like to put everyone in a box per se, but if you fit into a certain criteria, the best evidence-based research is to go through the DSM, and you can Google the DSM. There's lots of misinformation out there about food and about eating disorders. So you always want to make sure that you are using the right information from the right sources: a registered dietitian, a licensed professional counselor, the DSM, things of that nature, in order to make sure that you're getting the right information and have the knowledge that you need to help yourself. Do you have anything to add to that, Greta?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that in today's day and age, it's really easy to see something online and, oh, I kind of resonate with that. Does that mean that I have RFID or binge eating disorder? So we like the DSM for the reason of it's the most accurate way to really diagnose. And it's also learning to work with professionals that are credentialed versus just a health influencer or someone that maybe kind of gets a title that they give themselves. So it's important to know really where to get the good information.
Yes. And with that said, we're going to talk a little bit about the different eating disorders. There are a lot of different eating disorders out there. There's some new ones that aren't even in the DSM, and there's also some kind of logo or lingo that goes with them, right? So the first thing is anorexia nervosa. I always like to explain to individuals what is the real meaning behind a title of something. So if we think about anorexia and we looked at the real medical term, anorexia, the word anorexia is a medical term for loss of appetite. And so I like to read things verbatim because sometimes, we get mixed up on how we explain things. So A loss of appetite is when you don't feel hungry, and anorexia isn't the same as an eating disorder, anorexia nervosa. So anorexia itself is really just the loss of appetite. Anorexia nervosa is when an individual sometimes feels hungry but still restricts. So the nervosa type is a Latin term that translates to nervous or pertaining to the nerves. So it's an addition to the word anorexia that reflects the underlying mental distress and anxiety that accompanies the eating disorder. So anorexia nervosa is, either not eating or restricting of eating with these other mental health anxieties that come around with that. And the acronym, or the lingo for anorexia nervosa is AN, right? Also, sometimes individuals will call it ANA. And there's a couple other things that people use in terms of that. So I don't know if you want to pick up on that, Greta.
Yeah, sometimes to the point of, Anna or Ed, eating disorder, Ed, that's a way to almost like personify your eating disorder. So when we work with clients, to kind of like give it a name so we can separate it from like the rational thinking and then the eating disorder. And so kind of personifying with Ed or Anna is a way that we can connect with clients. But eating disorder and anorexia, usually there's a lot of body image distress or body dysmorphia where you're seeing yourself differently than from an external view. So a lot of the work with eating disorders isn't just teaching someone really how to eat, but also how to view themselves, differently so they can kind of get through it as they do the work with us.
Yeah, and to that, we really work with our clients around reframing their thoughts and how they see themselves and how they see their bodies and how they see food, because there is a lot of, nervousness around that. So the idea is to really help clients see food and see things in a different way, because their thoughts and their body image are often distorted, and they just don't have a healthy relationship with food. So anorexia nervosa is the one of the biggies, is one of the, I would say, the hardest to treat in terms of there's a lot of medical complications that come with all of our eating disorders, particularly anorexia nervosa. We see some really big things that we'll talk about in a couple of shows down the road, things such as nutrition deficiencies and refeeding syndrome and things of that order. But anorexia nervosa is the first one. So the second one is bulimia nervosa. So Greta, would you like to share a little bit about bulimia nervosa and what that looks like?
Yes. So bulimia nervosa is usually categorized by episodes of binge eating, which is consuming a large amount of food very quickly. It's separate from the diagnosis of binge eating disorder, which we'll go over next, because bulimia, there's usually some compensating behavior, such as purging, making yourself sick, sometimes over-exercising, could be laxative abuse. So there's usually some way to kind of like get rid of the amount of food that you've consumed due to, the overwhelming feelings of guilt or, discomfort. But it's, as all eating disorders are, very dangerous mentally, physically, emotionally. And it's important to get treatment to these, earlier on. The early intervention is key for preventing long-term issues with eating disorders and, ultimately, what can end up happening. So that's the bulimia. That's the second one. Any more to add to that, Dana?
Well, no, I mean, I think that's a really important, point that Greta just made, is early intervention to any of these things is the key. So if you see or know someone that is purging, their intake by either laxative abuse or getting rid of food by throwing it up, or drugs or alcohol, we see all sorts of different things with bulimia. You want to make sure that you get them help, because there are so many medical issues that can come along with that, especially when individuals are purging. So when purging is kind of the medical term that we use in bulimia nervosa, but that's when an individual is throwing up food, so getting rid of the food. And the hydrochloric acid from the stomach, when you throw something up, can burn your esophagus and cause all sorts of teeth problems. And we'll be talking specifically about bulimia nervosa in our fourth or fifth show. So there'll be a lot more information on that. Uh, and interestingly enough, individuals with bulimia nervosa sometimes can be of normal body shape. So a lot of times individuals say, well, in order to have an eating disorder, I have to be a certain weight or look a certain way. And that's not necessarily true. You can show signs of eating disorder symptoms and still present as not having an eating disorder at all. So I think it's important to just recognize the signs. One could be your daughter starts running 3, 4, 5 times a day, or you find them in the bathroom for a long period of time, or your son seems to be obsessed, or significant other or loved one obsessed over a certain amount of caloric intake and bodybuilding, things of that nature. So there's all sorts of different things that come with that.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point to bring up about them not eating disorders don't have a look. So if you are listening and you feel, well, would I qualify? I've never really been told I look like I have an eating disorder. It does not take away from the struggle, and it doesn't mean that you don't need help because it's not always seen. We can't look at someone and tell what they're struggling with, but it doesn't mean there's not a lot of damage going on to an individual.
Yes. I know we're coming right up on a break here, but we're just going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be going over next. So binge eating disorder is a big one. Night eating syndrome and ARFID is also a big one. So these are some eating disorders, specifically ARFID, and we'll talk about what that means. These are things that are new to the DSM, and we're seeing more and more in the medical community, and some people don't even realize that they have this disorder. So it's a really important topic that I think that we want to cover within this half an hour. And also, the overall message again, which is, reframing thoughts and helping individuals have healthier relationships with their bodies and food. And, if you want to learn more, you can contact us. There's information on the bottom, but you can contact myself or Greta at rd@anewonline.com, or just look up Ditch Disordered Eating with Dana, and you can find us there. But I think we're going to go to a break right now, and we'll come back shortly. Thanks so much, and welcome back to Ditch Disordered Eating with me, Dana. I'm here with my colleague, Greta. Hello. And we are talking about disordered eating and eating disorders today. And we said at the break we were going to come back and talk about a couple other different types of eating disorders. So the next thing we're going to talk about is binge eating disorder. So binge eating disorder is a disorder in which has specific kind of criteria. And so we're just going to read this off because we like to be very specific about the right thing so people don't get the wrong idea. So binge eating disorder is a behavior that's characterized by chronic compulsive overeating. While occasional overeating is normal, which we see, binge eating disorder is a condition that you live with every day, and it feels like you're out of control, and it interferes with your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. So binge eating means consuming a large quantities of food in a short period of time and feeling like you can't stop. And I think it's important. We're going to talk about this in other shows. We're continuing to talk about changing our relationship with food. A binge eating disorder itself really is about eating very large quantities of food, really feeling over control. Some people or our clients will come to us and say, I had a binge last night, or I binged the other day. And a lot of times what we're seeing is that they're actually just eating foods that they feel are bad. We definitely don't believe in that good or bad category. Individuals eat some cookies and some candy and say, I binged last night. That might feel like a binge to them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have binge eating disorder. So we really try to reframe their thoughts and say, you're just putting food into a good and bad category. You can give yourself permission to have that food, but sometimes for people it feels overwhelming because they have certain foods that we call trigger foods, and we'll talk about triggers and things later on in the show. But binge eating disorder specifically is something that distresses individuals on a daily basis. Would you have anything to add to that, Greta?
Yeah, when we say foods are good and bad, it puts like moral value to foods, which then we put it onto ourselves. I feel like I'm doing good because I stuck to the way that my diet plan was. We don't like to say the word diet either. Or I feel bad because I had a donut for breakfast. And then we start to just put that into like our own, how we are in our own morals. So we like to just say food is different nutritious density. And that's a kind of more neutral way to describe it. A lot of people that struggle with binging, they struggle with shame. And I want to really emphasize that it's important to not carry shame because it's caused from so many different reasons, and it's a lot more common than people think. But if it sounds like it's something you resonate with or feels like something you might be struggling with, it's definitely important to seek out help.
Yes, for sure. And I really like that you brought that up. There is a lot of shame in our society around food and body image and this idea of, these different diets and having to be perfect, right? And what does that even mean? What does perfect even mean? You know, I'm not a baseball fan or anything like that, but you'll hear someone say, they threw the perfect pitch, right? But every great pitcher doesn't throw the perfect pitch every time. So we really need to get away from this good or bad and this perfect and this perfectionism and really learn to live in the gray area, which is what we really try to work on with our clients, and really allow them to enjoy food for what it is. And as Greta said, food has different types of nutritional value. So it's not about not being able to give yourself permission to eat certain kind of foods, candies, and things of that nature. We just try to focus on percentages, right? So having a little bit more of your fruits and vegetables that are full of antioxidants and having the right amount of protein and carbohydrates, but also allowing yourself to have those other fun foods as well. So really good point. The next thing I think we want to jump to, because we don't have a lot of time and we want to talk about the different categories, is this new food category that's not even in the diagnostic manual yet, which is RFID. We're having a lot of clients that are coming to us, particularly parents, mostly with kids, saying, the doctor says that my child is suffering from RFID, and some individuals actually have just learned about it and realize that this is a category that they have been struggling with their whole life and didn't even realize that it was a thing, right? So when we talk about RFID, you want to get into kind of what the meaning is about that and a little bit more about that, Greta?
Yeah, so RFID, what it stands for is avoidant restricted food intake disorder. So it's sometimes actually like swapped with picky eaters, but it's really much different than that because there's going to be some medical impairments or indications that are going to come from the RFID. So it might cause nutrition deficiencies. It might cause delayed growth, puberty. So it's a lot more serious than just like your kid not really liking one vegetable over the other. There's usually 3 different reasons that someone is prone to kind of developing the RFID. One is having like some sensory or texture issues where it's very upsetting for them to have different textures in their mouth. And so that's something we work through exposure therapy, where we bring the foods in for them to try. Another is just lack of interest in food. So you might hear someone say, I could just go all day without eating. I don't really think about food. And they're not hitting their nutritional needs because they don't really have much of an interest, even if there is an appetite involved. And the last one is fear of a negative consequence, whether maybe they had a choking episode at some point in their life, or they were sick from something, and then they feel very, very nervous around food. So it's something that dietitians and mental health professionals can treat because we can work on what the why is of why these issues have come up and how to go forward with them. But that's one we're seeing more and more these days. It's been more common.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I love the way you described all of that. And I think having the information about RFID can help a lot of parents that, doctors or pediatricians say, your child is just a picky eater. And many children do grow out of their picky eating, but there are individuals that don't grow out of picky eating. It gets very frustrating for parents, and they don't understand what to do. My child only eats 3 foods, and he's, growing up, and now he's 13, 14, and 15, and still is not, expanding his palate. So for parents to be educated on this and know that they can come to a place like, a registered dietitian that specializes in this eating disorder. It is an eating disorder. They can really get the help that they need, because pediatricians and doctors really don't know. They can kind of diagnose it, but they really don't know how to treat it, because it is a mental health kind of issue. So if you can find a practice that is able to help with your child, sometimes they see a therapist as well as the dietitian. A dietitian that knows a lot about eating disorders is almost a mini therapist, as Greta I always say is, without the degree. So there is help out there for your kids that have very picky eating. So RFID is a big new one that we're seeing a lot of now. Let's see, what else have we missed out on? Well, there's night eating syndrome. So night eating syndrome is when an individual has recurrent episodes of eating after waking at night, or eating excessively after a meal. And these episodes cause significant distress or impaired functioning. So, sometimes individuals aren't even hungry. A lot of times this is caused by anxiety. I'm seeing with individuals that have trauma sometimes really struggle with night eating syndrome. And there's all sorts of ways that we can help individuals with night eating syndrome and reducing these behaviors. So many people are embarrassed about this. And I think it's important to recognize that this is also something that is a eating disorder, or just maybe you have some disordered eating, and you can get help for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I also think, it's important to note that some things are normalized of, oh yeah, I, sometimes eat out of anxiety, and there is times where that's going to happen, but sometimes it's going to cause further distress where then we don't sleep. And that's why eating disorders should be treated so holistically, in terms of, we need to look at your mental health patterns. We want to look at some background stuff. Was there some abuse, neglect when you were younger? Because they're really complex, and it's important to not just come at one angle and look at all the parts of somebody of how to help them through this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so this is just, again, this is what the show is going to be all about. It's going to be exploring different types of eating disorders. Our next show is going to be talking about what is the difference between disordered eating and an eating disorder. We could all make changes, and they don't have to be right away. We really are all about making small, attainable goals, working on living in the gray area, and helping individuals reframe and have a healthier relationship with food, and being able to get the knowledge and support. There's so much knowledge and support out there. There's so many individuals that can help. You just really need to not feel shameful about having eating issues or issues with food or your body. We all suffer with that. Society at large kind of almost implements individuals to constantly, Instagram, all of that, constantly be looking at yourself and judging yourself. So it's really important that if you feel that you're struggling to the level that you feel you have eating disorder, or even disordered eating that's transitioning into an eating disorder, to get help. You can reach out to myself or Greta. Again, you can look up Dana Wells or Greta O'Donnell. Our email or our website is rd@anewonline.com or anewonline.com. So our email again is rd@anewonline.com, and our website is anewonline.com. Greta, did you have any last kind of words of wisdom that you would like to kind of put in there?
I just am, excited to get these messages out, and I want people to know that they're not alone, and that there's help out there for anybody. And food shouldn't be stressful, because we have to do it at least 3 times every day for the rest of our life. So if we can take that stress away from food and feel relaxed and actually enjoy the experience, that would be wonderful. And we're here to help you guys. And there's a lot of people out there that can help you. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, we are on every 4th Monday, but you'll be able to hear our show at any time on our podcast and online. And again, our next show is going to be talking about the difference between eating disorders and disordered eating. So if you want more information, we look forward to hearing from you or you joining us for your next show, and give us some feedback. Let us know what you would like to hear as well. We would love that.
Yep.
So we thank you for joining us today, and Ditch Disordered Eating starts today. So we look forward to more shows together with me and Greta.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much. Thank you for tuning in. You have been listening to Ditch Disordered Eating with me, Dana Wells. We have been discussing different types of eating disorders. Tune in every fourth Monday of the month, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Transformation Talk Radio to find out how you can free yourself from negative cognitions related to food and your body. You can have a healthy relationship with food. For more resources and guidelines, connect with me at my website, anuonline.com. That's ANUE online.com.